Hello, everyone. As you're reading through Wogamon and preparing for, or possibly in the midst of writing your papers for exam one right now, there's a couple of things you want to think about. There's an aspect of philosophy that's in terms of logic and how people think through the reality and the way the world's put together. There's an aspect of philosophy called epistemology. And epistemology is that you can Google this, you can read about it in your text, but it has to do with how people know knowledge, how you know what you know. People have an epistemology either through their internal logic or through the senses. Philosophers have speculated on exactly how it is we can know what we know. Or do we know things are true simply because of how we experience them through the senses, through how we arrive at them through logical reasoning, through mathematics, through how do you know what you know? Well, epistemology is something that's very important in terms of dealing with Christianity and ethics. Excuse the glitches. In Christianity and ethics, we have to deal with epistemology, and the reason why is because in for religious purposes, particularly in terms of Western Christianity, not just Western, that's too narrow a term. Christianity in its mainstream, the Catholic traditions of Orthodox, Roman, Anglican, even the Protestant traditions coming from the European continent, or even the evangelical traditions that have really developed and grown on their own here in the United States. Christianity is highly dependent upon an epistemology of revelation. What do I mean by that? Meaning, by saying that their philosophy, their thinking comes from a sacred text, the view then is for the religious mind, how you know what you know is if you really force a Christian to be honest with their thought process. How you know what you know, they have an epistemology of I know knowledge through a sacred text, I therefore know knowledge that is beyond the senses. It's supernatural. It's beyond the natural senses. It's even beyond the human capacity to simply reason through it. So what they're saying, what typically a Christian or someone, or a Muslim or a Jew, or anyone who holds to a sacred text that trumps all other bits of reasoning. Religions that have a sacred text all hold this in common. They employ some reason, they employ some philosophy, but at the end of the day, they consider to be religions that hold a sacred text, Christianity being the one that's chief to our subject or our class. A religion that has a sacred text will basically say, we know knowledge, sure, we know things by reason, we know things by senses, but all those things are subservient or subordinate to the knowledge that is gained through what is revealed. That's what I mean by revelation. When I say revelation, I don't mean the book of Revelation that's in the Bible. I mean revelation is the act of revealing. Something is revealed that would not otherwise be known. So oftentimes sacred texts are referred to as the revelation of God. Muslims believe that the Quran is the direct revelation of God, because the angel speaks to Muhammad the direct words from God. So also, Jewish tradition would hold that the Hebrew Bible is a revelation from God, or because it is the spoken directly to Moses and the prophets and so forth. And the same thing for the Christian tradition with regard to the apostles and the New Testament writings. But the sacred text is revelation, and therefore it reveals what otherwise would not be known. It wouldn't otherwise be known through the senses. It wouldn't otherwise be known through plain reason. One of the chief examples of this in Christianity is their Christian doctrine of the Trinity. The Christian doctrine of the Trinity is as old as Christianity, but it is a thought process that is derived from what all the various different parts of the sacred writings, the New Testament writings, particularly the Gospels or Apostles' writings later on, has to say about the person of Jesus of Nazareth. And because they take all the clues from the various different parts of the New Testament that speak about it, early church fathers derived from that the idea of, well, how you can speak about Jesus, you have to say that he's equal to the Father, and you have to say that the Holy Spirit is equal to the Son. And so this idea, the text itself creates the boundaries that you can speak about God. And so by creating those boundaries, they winds up saying, okay, according to this revelation, the Father is God, the Son is God, and the Spirit is God, but the Father is not the Son or the Spirit, the Son is not the Father or the Spirit, and the Spirit is not the Father or the Son, yet these three are one. And thus comes the doctrine of the Trinity. Now, the doctrine of the Trinity is a good example of something that reason alone would not come up with, because the Trinity as a doctrine makes no sense. There's nothing comparable to it in the world. There's nothing like it necessarily in the natural world. So this idea of three people being one God, not three gods, but one God, but operating as three people, it's a paradox that, quite frankly, the normal reasoning would not come up with. It certainly isn't experienced through the senses at all. There's nothing in the natural world that corresponds to it. And so Christians show that they have an epistemology of revelation by holding firmly to this idea of the doctrine of the Trinity and saying, no, we hold to that as one of the chief Christian beliefs, even though it defies reason and the senses. So that's a perfect example of how they have an epistemology of revelation. Sure, we can reason through the senses and we can use our faculties of reason, but revelation from God supersedes all of that. For that very reason, Christian writers will stick to their text, or early Christian writers. You're reading through Wogelman, and you will see that these early writers, both in the ancient first 1,000 years of church history, later on in the Reformation period, through the Renaissance and into the American Enlightenment period, will continue going back to what does the sacred text say. And as a result, they keep on constraining themselves according to what the text allows for and what doesn't allow for. As a result, the Christian dilemma always is, well, you want to have possibly, by matter of reason, you possibly want to expand your thought process on a particular issue, ethically or morally, but as soon as you butt up against the guardrails of a sacred text, you have to stop, because supposedly the revelation of God, as embodied or recorded within a sacred text called the Bible, the revelation of God supersedes, or these days I've been trying not to use the term trump for some reason, but it trumps all other concerns. But those are the boundaries that it creates. You cannot, by means of the senses, for Christian ethical perspective, by means of the senses, by means of the internal feelings, by means of the human faculties, somehow you can. There's a lot of wiggle room, but in a religious context, you can't step outside the boundaries created by the sacred text, because supposedly it's revelation from God that supersedes all else. You have to keep that in mind if you're trying to understand the religious mindset on a thing. The religious mindset doesn't always subject itself to matters of reason or the senses, because it's going to go to something even higher. It considers the revelation from God to be even greater than that. And that's what I mean by the religious mindset. The Christian mindset maintains an epistemology of revelation. How do we know what we know? Because the Bible tells me so, is the old Sunday school saying is taught to small children. Anyway, I just wanted to contribute that to our conversation. As you're reading through our text, and if you're thinking, and if you're watching videos, you're wondering, how can someone think that? How can a religious mind go there if it seems as though matters of reason or popular demand or the consensus is going against them? The religious mindset will oftentimes say, yes, that's true. Maybe the senses say A, maybe the faculties of reason say B, but if the scriptures say C, we got to go with that one. So just something to kind of throw in your mindset so you'll better understand what's the religious mindset in dealing with these matters of ethics and morals. All right?